The Guardian. Word by word, Sophie digs herself deeper into trouble. By Gabby Hensliff and Vernon Wazir. Published Sunday, April 8th, 2001. It is the worst possible news after the worst possible week for the royal family. The news of the world this morning lays bare across 10 pages the full and excruciating contents of the so called quote unquote Sophie tapes. After days of frenzied speculation, the pages will make explosive reading at Buckingham Palace, where officials will this morning meet to consider an official response to the newspaper's allegations. The news is also bleak for the Countess of Wessex and Murray Harkin, her partner in PR company RJH. The paper devotes 2 pages to the secretly recorded boasts of Harkin, 37, who appeared to suggest he had used hard drugs. Harkin is alleged to have told Mazhar Mahmood, the News of the World reporter who posed as a sheikh's assistant, that he had taken cocaine and ecstasy. Harkin is reported to have told Mahmoud he could arrange for the Countess and her husband Prince Edward to endorse various business deals which the fake sheikh pretended he was trying to establish. The Queen is fiercely opposed to members of the royal family cashing in on their position. Palace officials will also find it difficult to brush aside disparaging comments made by the Countess about figures such as Prime Minister Tony Blair, Chancellor Gordon Brown, and Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles. Here we reprint an edited version of the transcripts published by the News of the World. What the Sophie tapes say. The Countess of Wessex has written roughshod over the convention that members of the royal family should never comment on politics. Her indiscretion on the so called quote unquote Sophie tapes raises disturbing questions given her delicate constitutional position and access to confidential information about her role as a PR company director. Her business partner at RJH, Murray Harkin, is also revealed as less than discreet in his boast about royal influence, the Earl of Wessex's sexuality, and drug taking. In the News of the World transcripts, the Countess appears to betray strong Tory sympathies, describing it as a quote unquote shame if William Hague loses the election. She dismisses Gordon Brown's budget as quote unquote pap, criticizes Labour's attempts to ban fox hunting, and accuses former Prime Minister John Major of leaking damaging royal information to distract from his political problems. The thoughts of the Countess and Harkin were secretly recorded at a lunch in London's Dorchester Hotel on March 14th. Also present was RJH account director Brett Perkins and two undercover quote unquote fake sheikhs, the News of the World's Mazhar Mahmood and photojournalist Conrad Brown. Asked about hunting, the Countess accuses Blair of not understanding countryside issues. Sophie, quote, he's ignorant of the countryside. His wife is even worse. She hates the countryside. She hates it. And because the popular vote is within the city, he's going to go with that all the time. I mean, because of the foot and mouth situation, they've been forced to take notice of the countryside. End quote. Mahmoud, quote, she, Cherry, seems low key. End quote. Sophie, quote, she's an intelligent woman and I think she wanted to keep her hand in. Or maybe she didn't think her husband's government was going to last long, so she'd have to go back to work anyway. End quote. The reporter then asks who is going to lose the forthcoming general election. Harkin, quote, the Tories, end quote. Sophie, quote, I think the majority is too great. Labor will lose a lot of seats, end quote. Harkin, quote, Portillo seems nice, has a bit of panache about him, a bit of style, which Haig doesn't seem to, end quote. Sophie, quote, it's a shame really because William is very intelligent. I think he's got real vision, but he's got this awful kind of way he thinks, like that all the time, mimics Haig. He sounds like a puppet, unfortunately. When we used to see John Major, he had this real problem of being quite defensive, especially at Prime Minister's question time. Also, in front of a TV camera, he came across as completely wooden. I have to say that I blame him, Major, and a lot of people do, for a number of things, and he used the royal family terribly badly to cover up a lot of things they were doing. The leaks that came from Downing Street were frightening. End quote. The Countess then praises Haig's performance in attacking the quote unquote nothing budget in the Commons. Sophie, quote, it's the budget all for the election. That's all it is. It's a load of pap. What they failed to say is that the figure of increase in everybody's taxes is something frightening since the Labor Party came to power. The man in the street is paying something like an additional 40% in tax, end quote. Asked whether Haig could get elected, the counsel says the public do not appear to like him, but goes on to accuse Tony Blair of giving a fake impromptu speech after Diana's death. Sophie, quote, I know it wasn't off the cuff at all because I know who wrote it. We call him President Blair over here anyway because he thinks he is, end quote. When Mahmoud suggests that Blair is Clinton, quote, without Monica, end quote, Sophie jokes, quote, well, we don't know that, end quote. In a previous meeting not attended by the Countess, Harkin was asked whether John Major could attend an event, but he replied that the former PM was, quote, a bit of a has been, end quote. The tapes also questioned Sophie's ability to separate her business and royal interests, admitting that it, quote, does cause conflicts, end quote. She says clients are told to treat hers like any other PR firm, but immediately stresses the appeal of hiring a princess. Sophie, quote, for instance, in your own country, when people find we're working for you, the chances are you'll get people interested. Oh gosh, they've employed the Countess of Wessex's PR company, end quote. In the earlier conversation without the Countess, Harkin has said the Countess might go to Dubai and, quote, there's potential for Edward as well, end quote, adding that they had already been to Dubai. Harkin, quote, between you and me, they went to one of our clients. They gone for the weekend. So again, it's like she's bought into it and she got Edward involved and bought into it as well, end quote. They then discussed precisely what the Countess would do to promote clients. Mahmoud, quote, could we put her photo in brochures and things like that? End quote. Harkin, quote, that's then where we start to get into a problem. One client said she would go and stand next to a product. That is where we get into the real problems. If, however, we do a launch party in Dubai and she's there and she's photographed, that's not a problem. End quote. Mahmoud, quote, and we could publish that photograph. End quote. Harkin, quote, yes, we've got to be very careful. The fact that she would be involved would give the project profile in the media anyway, end quote. Harkin even advocates using royal photographs for other reasons. Harkin, quote, and anyway, you can buy photographs of her meeting the queen or meeting various people. You can do whatever you like with those. So in that sense, you get endorsement from it, end quote. He boasts that the Countess could secure celebrities such as Sean Connery or even Julia Roberts, describing charity events she has done with celebrities which have been sold to Hello magazine. Harkin, quote, now she could do something in Dubai where she could take Sean Connery and a few of those people just to experience it and see it and be seen there. And it could be the same week as your launch party. What you could do is identify some key people, the likes of Julia Roberts, and say, Sophie's inviting you to come to Dubai. If the princess from England invites you, I mean, you know what Americans are like. They love it, end quote. It is at the third meeting with both Harkin and the Countess that the reporters collect some royal gossip. Sophie says the public wanted to make her, quote, the new Diana, end quote. Sophie, quote, and I don't think I could have coped with that level of pressure or expectation. Everyone said, gosh, doesn't she look like Diana? Then they thought, this isn't going to be much good because she's not going to be turning up every day in different outfits, opening children's hospitals, you know? I do some of that, but not as much as they'd like, end quote. Asks whether the Prince of Wales is not quote unquote too formal. Sophie replies that, quote, he's always been. He likes formalities in life, end quote, but goes on to defend him as a fun and relaxed father. Sophie, quote, he's a man who has always been ahead of his years. He was damned as a complete quack. People laughed at him for his views on architecture, but now they're starting to take notice, end quote. Even on the sensitive subject of Charles and Camilla, she is still forthcoming. Sophie, quote, it's a very difficult situation. On the one hand, there's no reason why she shouldn't be accepted because he's divorced and she's divorced. But then again, you've got issues of the monarch being the head of the church. I think it's hard, especially while Queen Elizabeth is alive, the Queen Mother. End quote. What may hurt more is Harkin's comments about her own husband during the meeting where she was not present, when quizzed on rumors apparently about Prince Edward's sexuality. Harkin, there have been rumors for years about Edward. I'm a great believer that there's no smoke without fire. He goes on to make embarrassing revelations about his personal life, describing how in the Netherlands it is possible to buy quote unquote testers of cocaine, and says the fact that cannabis is illegal is quote unquote crazy. Asked how guests could be entertained at the Sheikh's quote supposed leisure complex, end quote, Harkins suggests a dinner party in Britain for which he could invite quote unquote interesting people. Harkin, quote, A-list people that he would like, discreet, nice gentlemen that he would like, end quote. Mahmoud, quote unquote, young boys? Harkin, quote, not young, but kind of like nice boys, all good jobs, end quote. The conversation then switches to recreational drugs. Harkin, quote, I don't do lots of drugs, but the odd line of coke I quite like in trying. And trying to find it is just a nightmare, end quote. Mahmoud, quote, have you had ease, ecstasy tablets? End quote. Harkin, quote, not for a couple of years. It was really terrible stuff, end quote. He adds that Sophie is, quote, just about the purest thing you've ever met, end quote, and hardly ever drinks. Laughing, he adds, quote, so if you gave her drugs, she'd die, I think, end quote. The men discuss places to visit in Thailand, Harkin recommending some quote unquote really sleazy bars in Bangkok. The three then apparently turn to discussing rent boys, with Harkin confiding that, quote, in India I gave someone like 2 weeks' pay, end quote.